All right, you can begin.
Good morning, everyone. I am Jamie Phillip, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today to explore an exciting topic, power and influence. Can you believe it's the last day of group presentations? It's been a short, enjoyable, and informative semester thus far, but we're not done yet. We want to keep you hyped and engaged, so get ready because this presentation is going to be quite interactive and full of surprises. We know virtual sessions can get a little tiring at times, but we will try to keep things fun and lively. Today, we're going to shed light on a concept that's often misunderstood. As the saying goes, what's in the dark must come to light, and that's exactly what we aim to do. We wish to shed light on both the positive and negative sides of power and influence. Many people hear power and influence and immediately think of control, dominance, or even abuse. But today we'll explore how power isn't always about the negative. It can also inspire, uplift, and influence in meaningful ways. Before we begin, let's start with a little icebreaker. Many of you may be familiar with the TikTok trend, put your finger down. Today, we're putting a twist on it. We're asking you to put your virtual hands down instead. So, to get started, we'll ask everyone to raise your virtual hands up. I'll read a statement, and if the statement relates to you, you put your hands down. So, let's get started with the first statement. Put your hand down if you've ever had to convince someone to agree with your idea. For those who put their hands down, what this reveals about you is that your influence sometimes isn't tied to a title or position. Anyone can lead simply by using the power of persuasion. Many of us have practiced influence without even realizing it, and influence is one of the foundations of leadership. It shows that you've used your personal influence through communication, persuasion, and confidence to shape someone else's thinking. Everyone, please raise your hands if you had them lowered earlier. Put your hand down if you've ever followed a leader who inspires you. What this reveals about those who lower their virtual hands, you have personally experienced positive leadership. It shows that true leadership goes beyond giving orders. True leadership inspires, motivates, and influences others through actions and examples. When we think of an inspiring leader, we start to understand what true leadership looks like. It's about trust and leading by example, not just authority. Let's continue. Put your hand down if you've ever used your influence to motivate a friend or coworker. This demonstrates emotional intelligence and the ability to influence others through empathy and encouragement. It also indicates leadership potential, as these individuals naturally support, motivate, and uplift those around them. You should note that your influence can be quiet and personal. It's often the unseen forces that keeps teams motivated and connected. Once again, raise your hands if you had them lowered earlier. Put your hand down if you think power means authority. This question tests perceptions of power. Those who kept their hands up might understand that power can also come from expertise, relationships, or knowledge, not just position. Not all power is positional, there's personal power. This power originates from an individual's unique qualities and characteristics rather than their official title or position. It is built on the leader's ability to influence others through personal attributes such as knowledge, skills, and expertise, which form the basis of expert power. Additionally, it includes referent power, which stems from the respect, trust, and admiration others have for the leader, allowing them to inspire and motivate through personal connections and positive relationships. Keep these in mind, we'll explore them later. Put your hand down if you've ever been part of a team where everybody wanted to lead. This reflects experience with leadership, dynamics, and conflict. It shows awareness of how power struggles can affect teamwork.
Thanks, Jamie, for that exciting warm-up. Based on the responses, it's clear that everyone here has experienced power, influence, and leadership, but in different ways. Some of you would have experienced it as leaders, some as followers. Thanks for your participation. You may lower your hands. Good morning. I am Shanice Forbes. We'd like to sincerely thank Mr. BUSI for giving us this opportunity. Joining me today are facilitators, Jamie Phillip, who just completed that engaging icebreaker with you. Please keep your responses in mind and reflect on them as we go through this presentation. Also today with us would be Kissel Joyo, who you will engage with a bit later. We will try to keep you engaged throughout this presentation. We hope you enjoy your short time with us and that we can provide some insight into leadership, power, and influence. But also, after this presentation, we hope that you discover something new about yourself, the kind of leader you aspire to be, and the kind of leader you'd like to work with. By the end of this presentation, we want to ensure you clearly understand all key concepts. We will be highlighting and revisiting major points to ensure that you learn along the way and to support your learning. So let's look at leadership and what it means. An article from the Center for Creative Leadership says that leadership is often defined by a leader's actions or abilities. However, while individual skills and behavior matter, true leadership lies in what people accomplish collectively. Let's take a moment and you can write in the chat one quality that you believe a leader should have. For those that may be shy or those that may have placed answers in the chat, I would like you to know that your thoughts, that what you believe is a true leader, is correct. A leader should have most, if not all, the qualities mentioned in this word cloud. But most importantly, a leader brings people together to achieve something that is greater than what any one person could do alone. Leadership can be defined as the capacity of any individual or group to inspire, influence, and direct others within a team, organization, or the community towards achieving common goals. So let's talk a little bit about transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is a style of leadership that motivates and inspires by setting clear vision. It encourages creativity and supports personal growth. These leaders build trust, enthusiasm, helping individuals surpass their own expectations, all while working together to achieve meaningful change. They are committed to the success of every team member and focus on driving positive transformation.
So, can anyone think of a time when they performed transformational leadership or experienced it? Good morning, leadership and ethics class. My name is Kessel Joyo, and an example of this would be a teacher who inspires students to do their best, encourages creativity, and supports their personal growth. This kind of teacher recognizes each student's potential, whether it's in writing, art, or sports, and the teacher offers constructive feedback, challenges them to step outside their comfort zone, and celebrates their progress and achievements, and recognizes it, not just their grades.
Thanks, Cassell, for sharing that. Don't feel shy. Please feel free to unmute and share if you have something to share along the way. So to understand Kessel's example better, we saw the presence of transformational leadership here because this teacher inspired and motivates rather than just enforcing rules, focus on personal growth, helping the students reach their full potential, created trust and enthusiasm within the classroom, which encouraged everyone to strive for more. Many transformational leaders possess charisma and natural talent, which inspires enthusiasm. It causes loyalty among followers. However, while charismatic leadership often evokes admiration and a sense of submission, transformational leadership focuses more on motivating and actively engaging followers to participate and grow.
Thanks, Janice, for sharing that. But I would also like to add that while charisma is generally seen as a positive trait, it does have a darker side when used for the wrong reasons. So allow me to share the other side of charisma, which is called the black hat of charisma, or as Gen Z would say it, the black hat of Riz. The black hat of charisma means that while being charismatic can inspire people and bring positive change, it can also be dangerous if used for the wrong reasons. Charisma can be seen as a double-edged sword. It is a powerful personal quality that makes people attractive, inspiring, and persuasive. But this power can go two ways. Let's take a look at the pros and cons of charisma. On the bright side, it inspires people for good causes. People like Gandhi and Kennedy exemplify this. It builds unity and motivation, and it benefits the group or society. On the other hand, it manipulates or deceives others for selfish goals. We see this with Hitler and Manson. It creates division, fear, or blind loyalty. You may become too dependent on the leader rather than learning to become an independent leader. Personalized charisma might bring short-term excitement, but it harms organizations or societies in the long run. Charisma is not automatically good. It depends on how it's used and why the leader uses it. Charisma is not always a blessing. It depends on the leader's intention. When leaders use their charm for selfish reasons, it becomes the black hat of charisma. Powerful, but dangerous.
Thanks, Jamie, for sharing that. I do recall in our second session, Mr. Bisu mentioning this dark side of charisma. So let's now focus on transactional leadership. Transactional leadership focuses on a structure, supervision, and performance through a system of rewards and punishment. It is built on an exchange model where employees are rewarded for meeting set standards, and then they are penalized if they fall short. So this approach assumes workers need clear instructions and oversight in order to stay motivated, and that they will perform tasks in exchange for a desired benefit, which is normally pay. Does anyone find the idea of a transactional leader appealing? Or have you ever worked with a transactional leader and would like to share your experience?
So I would like to share an example for anyone who might still need a bit more clarification. Imagine a sales manager at a company who sets a target for the team. Anyone who reaches or exceeds the target for the month receives a bonus, while those who don't meet it get a warning or lose certain privileges. Let me explain why it's transactional. The relationship is based on an exchange for work. The manager provides clear goals and rules. Either work hard and get rewarded, or fail to meet expectations and face consequences. And also, self-motivation can be influenced by external factors such as rewards like bonuses or recognition, as well as penalties such as warnings.
I'd like to share another example. Think of a child asking for a particular toy for their birthday, and the child's mom will only purchase it if the child performs well at school. Why this is a transactional? It's based on an exchange. Do this and you'll get that. The mom set a clear expectation, pass the exam, and get a reward. Motivation came from the reward, not inspiration or personal growth. The relationship in this situation focuses on performance and outcomes, which is exactly how transactional leadership works.
Transactional leaders focus heavily on performance metrics and results, emphasizing the achievement of specific goals and standards. Their motivation style is driven by external rewards and penalties, where employees are encouraged through incentives or disciplined for underperformance. This creates a work environment that is often strict, high pressure, and judgmental. Their leadership approach centers to control monitoring and ensuring compliance with established procedures. Feedback from transactional leaders tends to involve frequent criticism related to performance, and individual effort is often overlooked unless it directly contributes to meeting targets. This is best for individuals who need clear rules and structure. On the flip side, transformational leaders focus on people, growth, and motivation, inspiring their teams through a shared vision and sense of purpose. Their motivation style centers on internal drive rather than external rewards, encouraging individuals to find meaning in their work. They foster a supportive, inspiring, and encouraging environment where employees feel valued and empowered. Their leadership approach is built on trust, collaboration, and the empowerment of others to reach their full potential. Feedback is constructive and focused on improvement, aiming to help individuals grow both personally and professionally. Transformational leadership values effort, progress, and personal development, making it ideal for individuals who appreciate autonomy, encouragement, and continuous growth. So, has anyone ever experienced any of these leadership styles and would like to share your encounter?
Okay, Kissel, I think they are still warming up, so I guess I will share my experience. So in my organization, we have performance management reports. And under one of those metrics, when I have to type a letter, I must do it within 24 hours with no more than one correction just to meet expectations. So if I had to exceed the expectation based on the organization standard or my manager's standard, it needed to be finished within the hour, completely error-free. Even completing it just a few hours later to my manager was still considered average. Each time I submitted a letter, I was immediately greeted with a comment about how long I took to complete it, which made that environment even more stressful. I constantly felt judged as if my performance didn't matter at all. No improvement didn't matter at all. I did not feel like a human. I eventually had to create this Excel spreadsheet to track every task just to justify any delays. Well, I got the letter request at 10, but I couldn't start it till 1 because a customer came in for this request just to have some justification as to why I would pass that met expectations bar. That was exhausted. I was so happy when they transferred me to another department, that because that environment there focused so much on the rules and the outcomes that it overlooked me as an individually. Personally, I would prefer transformational leadership.
Thanks for sharing that, Shanice. What a testament. That sounds exhausting. It's clear that transactional leadership focuses on structure, control, and meeting specific performance standards, which can create a stressful environment for employees who value creativity and autonomy. In contrast, transformational leadership emphasizes motivation, personal growth, and emotional support, leading to greater job satisfaction and long-term development. But I also heard you mention that individuals who struggle with deadlines and time management may often prefer a transactional manager because this leadership style provides the structure, accountability, and clear expectations they need to stay on track. And I must say, I agree with that because transactional leaders use specific goals, timelines, reward, and correct systems that help such individuals remain focused and organized. This approach will definitely reduce uncertainty and create a sense of stability, making it easier for them to manage tasks and meet deadlines. But though this leadership style supports discipline and consistency, we should not become over-reliant on it because it can limit creativity and independence. So the most effective approach should be a combination of transactional structure with transformational encouragement to help employees grow in self-management over time. Ooh, wow, that was quite a lot to take in. So let's take a quick moment to relax. We've got something exciting coming up for you. Throughout most of our lessons in the semester, several leaders will discuss. Persons highlighted how some leaders guided their teams successfully to achieve outcomes that benefited everyone, and some not so much. Let's see how well you remember them. So you'll get 2 hints and then 2 seconds to guess the answer. Feel free to type your responses in the chat or raise your virtual hand and we'll invite you to unmute and share your answer. Let's play Who's Got Charisma? Wait, I'm sorry. I mean, Who's Got Riz? Let's see if you can guess our first leader, dead or alive, who truly displayed charisma. So this person preached nonviolence and equality and was also famous for their speech with the inspiring words, "I have a dream," and was assassinated for his beliefs. This one is easy. So I'll give you all the answer. For anyone that said Martin Luther King Jr., they are correct. Martin Luther King Jr. was a visionary civil rights leader who championed equality and justice through non-violent protests. Question 2. This charismatic leader rose to power through passionate speeches and was responsible for a global war and a genocide. So, for y'all that may not have answered, the answer would be Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was a dictator whose pursuit of power and extremist ideology led to World War II and the Holocaust.
Okay, Kessel, I guess Uncle Ben in Spider-Man was right. With great power, we certainly see comes great responsibility.
That's true. So moving along to our next Riz leader, this leader spent 27 years in prison and promoted peace and forgiveness. So for those who may not know, it's no other than Nelson Mandela. He has so much riz and strength to survive 27 years in prison and still had energy and drive to keep fighting. Nelson Mandela was a symbol of peace and resilience who fought against apartheid and became South Africa's first Black president. This next leader, I can truly say a large percentage of the world appreciates him. This leader is known for revolutionizing technology and design and launched powerful products. Now, don't disappoint me. Who's this charismatic leader? Well, I'll say it for you guys. It's Mr. Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a visionary innovator who revolutionized technology and design through Apple's groundbreaking products. We're down to the last Riz leader for the day. This one is, well, I'll let you decide. This leader claimed to be a prophet and had so much charisma that it led to a mass suicide in 1978. Now, can anyone guess this charismatic leader? This charismatic leader would be Jim Jones. He was the founder of the People's Temple, a religious movement that began in the 1950s, promoting equality and social justice. Over time, his leadership became increasingly controlling and manipulative. In 1978, he orchestrated a mass murder-suicide. More than 900 people, including children, tragically lost their lives in the event. So thank you all for participating so enthusiastically. That wraps up our game. Great teamwork and quick thinking all around. In this game, we saw leaders who inspired, innovated, and motivated their audiences. And we also saw leaders who used charm to manipulate or control others. What all of them had in common was charisma. This shows us that being charismatic isn't always positive. When used in the wrong way, it can turn into the black hat of charisma. Let's continue to carry that same energy for the rest of the lesson. Next, we're going to talk about a concept that shapes every organization, every team, and even our daily interactions. Power. Remember earlier, we briefly mentioned power. Well, now it's time to go deeper into what is power. Power in organizations is an intangible force. It cannot be seen, but its impact is clearly felt. It is often defined as the potential ability of an individual or department to influence others to take action or complete tasks they might not have done otherwise. Power in organizations isn't just one thing. It comes in many forms, and understanding these different types is what separates a good leader from a great one. Some power comes from official positions, some from knowledge, and some from the ability to inspire and connect with others. Power can be categorized into two main groups: positional power and personal power. As mentioned previously, positional power comes from the rank or title you hold within an organization. It's the authority granted to you based on your place in the hierarchy, rather than your personal qualities or characteristics. This kind of influence is connected to your role, not necessarily to who you are as an individual. Positional power can take the form of legitimate power, reward power, or coercive power. On the flip side, personal power is the kind of influence that comes from who you are as a person, not the position you hold. It's built on your individual skills, talents, personality, and the qualities that make others trust and respect you. Unlike positional power, it isn't something given by a title from organization. It's something you can earn through your actions, expertise, and character. This type of power often inspires and motivates people even more than formal authority can. Personal power can take the form of expert power or reverent power. Now, we'll explore 5 key forms of power that leaders use to influence and guide their teams: legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, and referent power. We'll begin with legitimate power, also known as authority. This is the power that comes from a person's official position within an organization's hierarchy and is based on the recognized authority associated with a particular role or title. For example, a company president holds certain powers and responsibilities simply because of their position within the organization structure. Next, let's consider reward power. In leadership, power extends beyond formal authority. It's about influence. Reward power is a powerful yet sometimes misunderstood form of influence, referring to a leader's ability to motivate and inspire others through incentives. When applied effectively, reward power can enhance performance, boost morale, and foster a positive team culture. Moving on to coercive power. This type involves using authority and influence over others through force or the threat of punishment. It is a form of authoritarian control where individuals are compelled to follow instructions even if they are unwilling. While general organizational authority grants power, coercive influence comes specifically from a person in a position of power who uses their status to ensure compliance. Now let's examine expert power. This form of influence is highly valuable in today's world as it comes from a person's knowledge or expertise in a specific area. People naturally gravitate towards those with proven skills and qualifications. However, expert power is not static. Its effectiveness depends on the ability to adapt and grow. In a rapidly changing environment, the true strength of expert power lies in continuously updating and applying one's expertise to meeting evolving demands and influence others effectively. And finally, we have referent power, which is one of the most enduring forms of influence. This power emerges when team members respect and relate to you on a personal level, perhaps due to your integrity, empathy, or calmness under pressure. Referent power helps build strong, trust-based relationships and is especially valuable in today's remote work environment where personal connections are harder to maintain. By letting your personality shine, even virtually, leaders can foster a culture of respect, authenticity, and engagement.
All right. I know that was a lot of information to take in. So let's pause for a quick recap. We talked about 5 types of power: legitimate, reward, cohesive, expert, and reference, and how each of these shape the way leaders influence others. Now, instead of just talking about them, let's see how well you can recognize them in action. So we're going to do a quick scenario game. So I realize you all might still be a bit shy, so I will let this one be a self-assessment. So as we go along, you can do a self-assessment to identify which type of power is being used. Here is your first scenario. A team member tells everyone they must submit their reports by 4 p.m. because that's the rule set by management. Everyone's listened since it's part of their job expectation. What type of power is this? So if you were listening to Cassell, you would understand that this is legitimate power. So we'll move on to the next one. A supervisor announces that the employees with the highest sales this month would receive a gift card and an extra day off. What type of power do you think this is? For those of you that are doing the self-assessment, yes, indeed, that is reward power. A project manager threatens to cut team members from an upcoming trip if they keep missing deadlines. That is no other than cohesive power. Let's move on to the next one. Even though she's not the boss, everyone turns to Amara for advice because she's skilled at solving complex problems and has years of experience. Indeed, it is expert power. Scenario 5. A manager earns respect from the team because they always listen, stay calm under pressure, and treat everyone fairly. People want to follow their lead. So if you are thinking about referent power, you are correct. Okay, we're halfway through. So let's see if you can catch this one. It might sound familiar, but listen to the key detail. During a meeting, a senior accountant's suggestions are quickly accepted because of his extensive knowledge of financial regulations. It's his knowledge, so indeed it is expert power. A supervisor reminds the team that as the department head, they have the final say in approving the vacation schedules. Yep, that is legitimate power. A team member volunteers to help their leaders because they admire how approachable and supportive that leader is. That leader is exemplifying reverent power. Let's look at a situation where consequences play a major role. So an employee is told that they lose their remote access privileges if they continue showing up late for meetings. That is cohesive power. And finally, a company launches an Employee of the Month program, rewarding staff who go above and beyond with public recognition and small prizes. The prizes there should have given it away. It is reward power. Great job, everyone. That wraps up our Name That Power self-assessment. Hopefully, this helped you reflect on how different types of power can show up in real-life workplaces and maybe even recognize which one you use most often.
Now that we've identified the different types of power and reflected on how they appear in the workplace, let's take it a step further. How do people actually react to the use of power, whether it's positive or negative? The way power is applied can greatly influence motivation, trust, and overall team dynamics. Let's explore some of those reactions. When leaders use positional power, whether legitimate, reward-based, or coercive, the typical response from followers is compliance. Compliance means that people follow the instructions of those in authority, even if they do not fully agree, carrying out tasks and obeying orders without enthusiasm. Often, followers do only the minimum required to satisfy the leader and may not reach their full potential. Furthermore, if positional power, particularly cohesive power, is applied beyond what employees consider acceptable, resistance can occur. Resistance happens when employees deliberately try to avoid following instructions or attempt to disobey orders, which limits the effectiveness of leaders who rely solely on positional power. In contrast, personal power, such as expert or referent power, tends to generate commitment. Commitment occurs when followers adopt the leader's viewpoint and carry out instructions enthusiastically. Remember, positional power, whether legitimate, reward-based, or cohesive, comes from the authority of your role and usually leads to compliance. If overused, it can also trigger resistance. In contrast, personal power, such as expertise or qualities that inspire respect and admiration, leads to commitment as followers willingly embrace the leader's perspective and carry out tasks with enthusiasm. While the type of power a leader carries, positional or personal, affects how followers respond, the effectiveness of that power also depends on the level of dependence others have on the leader or the leader has on them. In other words, power is not just about authority or expertise. It also comes from how much others rely on you for something they need. So let's take a look at who holds the power. Power comes from others' dependence. A person gains power when others rely on them for something they want or need, such as information, resources, or skills. The more dependent someone is on you, the more power you have over them. An example of this is a company where only one employee knows how to operate a critical piece of software that runs the company's finances. If the manager or other employees need that software to complete their work, they must rely on this employee. Because of this dependence, the employee has significant power in the workplace. Perhaps they can influence decisions or negotiate better conditions. Next, dependency affects positional and personal power. Positional power is based on formal authority, ability to reward or punish. This depends on the organizational structure and economic conditions. An example of this, a store manager can give raises and issue warnings to employees because of their official role. Personal power is based on expertise, respect, and admiration. This becomes more important when employees are hard to replace. An example of this is a senior software developer that's highly respected for their expertise. So even without formal authority, their advice and decisions strongly influence the team. Lastly, we will look at the economic conditions influence of dependency. We see this when jobs are plentiful, there is low unemployment, employees are less dependent on leaders. Leaders are more dependent on skilled employees, so personal power is more effective. And when jobs are scarce, this means there's high unemployment, employees are more dependent on leaders. Leaders can rely on positional power, but may not inspire full commitment or enthusiasm. So when we look at low unemployment, let's say it's a tech company that's struggling to find skilled programmers, the employees have the bargaining power. The managers must rely on respect and expertise, their personal power to motivate them. On the flip side, high unemployment during an economic downturn leads to managers using more of their authority. That's the positional power we spoke of earlier. They will use this power to enforce rules, but employees may only comply without full enthusiasm. Let's look at the key takeaway. Leaders' effectiveness depends on who depends on whom. Position power works best when employees are dependent on leaders, but personal power is essential to motivate and gain commitment, especially when employees have other options. So, to recap, power in leadership isn't just about authority, it's also about dependence. The more others rely on you for something important, whether it's knowledge, resources, or skills, the more power you hold. Position power comes from formal authority, which is the ability to reward or punish. It's effective when employees are dependent on leaders, such as during tough economic times when jobs are scarce, and personal power comes from expertise, respect, and admiration. It's most effective when leaders are dependent on employees, such as in times of low unemployment when skilled workers are hard to find. Ultimately, a leader's effectiveness depends on who depends on whom. Position power enforces compliance, but personal power inspires commitment, and true leadership requires both.
Hi, team. So Jamie is absolutely right. To truly understand how dependency creates power, we need to analyze the specific factors that generate it. So we're going to take a deeper look into the NIS rule. No, I don't mean the national insurance scheme that's been in the news lately. I mean non-substitutability, importance, and scarcity. So let's start with non-substitutability. This is the strongest lever. It simply asks, can the employee get this resource or a good substitute anywhere else? An example of this here is low power. Let's say an employee needs a computer monitor and there are 3 different managers can approve this purchase. The resource here is easily substituted, hence low power, because if a manager A is not in office, the employee still has the option of going to manager B or C. Okay? But if you are the only one in the organization that is authorized to approve a critical project that the team needs to survive, meaning there is no substitute for your signature, you, for in this instance, has high dependency. So you hold all the cards, and that's high power. Next is importance. Why we care. So we are going to look at the why we care rule. You might be the only person who controls something that's non-substitutable, but does it really matter what it is you are holding. How vital is this resource to the employee's goal? If you are the only person in the organization, let's say, to approve a budget for sticky notes, that's low importance. Your power here is low. But if you are the only person who can approve funding for the entire company's new project launch, that's definitely high importance. You have enormous power here. Dependency is only created when you control something that is critical in the organization. Finally, we have scarcity. This looks beyond your organization and asks, how rare or hard is it to find this resource? So because it's beyond the organization, we are even looking globally. So if you are an expert in a field where thousands of students graduate every year, your skills here are not scarce. But if you are one of 5 people in the world who can code a specific algorithm, your skill set here is scarce. Even if the company tries to replace you, they can't. So this scarcity locks in dependency. To wrap up, leaders gain maximum position power when they are the only source of a critical resource that is rare. When you have that high dependency, we would see compliance here. However, when the resources are common, your position power vanishes. And that's when you as a leader must now switch to personal power, using your motivation and your influence to gain genuine commitment. Your effectiveness as a leader always comes down to who depends on whom.
That was a lot of powerful information to process. So before we jump into our next topic, we're going to play a quick round of virtual word on scramble. The words are all drawn directly from the concepts we covered. The rules are simple. Type your answer in the chat as fast as you can. No clues given. You'll have 10 seconds for each word, and then the answer will be revealed if no one gets it. So let's get started with the first word. So Ciara is saying leadership. That's correct. Antonella is saying charismatic. That's also correct. Right, a few people are saying power. That is correct. So no one got this word. It was persuasive. Ciara and Antonelle is saying influence. That's correct. The answer is positional. Ciara and she is saying cohesive. That's correct. Shay and Antonelle is saying ethics. That's also correct. Shay says inspire. That's correct. Shay and Antonelle says legitimate. That's correct. The answer is reverent. Ciara and Antonelle said resistance. That's correct. The answer is scarce. Antonelle, Ciara, and Shay says dependence. That answer is also correct. Elijah, Ciara, and Antonelle said compliance. That answer is correct. And Ranilla as well.
Congratulations, team. I bet you never imagined you'd be in another spelling bee again. The word scramble was a fun way to revisit some of the key concepts we've discussed so far. Now, let's take it a step further and explore exactly where leaders derive their power. Power within organizations is not solely determined by a leader's formal title or personal qualities, but also by their role and importance within the organizational structure. There are two main types of power. Formal power, which arises from an official position, such as a manager or supervisor, and personal power, which stems from individual traits like charisma, expertise, and relationships. The strategic contingencies theory further explains that power also depends on how crucial a person or department is to the organization's success, meaning individuals gain influence when others rely on them to keep operations running effectively. Now, let's discuss these sources of power a bit further. One important source of power in organizations is interdepartmental dependency. Departments rely on each other for resources, information, or support to operate effectively. The more one department depends on another, the more the providing department holds. Another major source of leader power is control over information. Even though organizations are moving toward open communication, not everyone has the same access to information. Having access to and managing important knowledge that others need to make decisions. Leaders who control key information often gain more power and influence in an organization. The next source of power is organizational centrality. This means how central or vital a leader's department is to the organization's main activities. How closely a person or department is connected to others within a company's network. Those at the center of communication or decision-making hold more influence and power. The final source of leader power is coping with uncertainty. Organizations face constant change and unpredictable challenges like market shifts, supply issues, or labor disputes. Leaders must find ways to manage unexpected problems or changes that could affect the organization. Departments or leaders who can handle uncertainty effectively gain more power and value within the company. In the end, a leader's power goes far beyond their title. It comes from how much others depend on them and the value they bring to the organization, whether through controlling key resources, managing vital information, being central to core activities, or skillfully handling uncertainty. Leaders gain influence by making themselves indispensable. True power lies in contributing meaningfully to the organization's success and guiding others confidently through both stability and change. So, has anyone ever worked hard on something important only to realize no one really noticed? Would anyone like to share if they had an experience like this?
Well, Cassell, I'll go ahead and share, but mine's is not too work related, right? So by nature, I am a natural planner. So whenever I go out with friends or we make plans, I am always the one that is planning in the event we end up in a predicament or something. So I usually have a plan A, B, C, D, E. Anyways, the English alphabet is too short. The Japanese alphabet have 46 characters, so I started using that. So whenever we end up in this predicament when we go out as friends, I am usually the one to pull the team out. And everyone always ends up having a good time. But no one ever stops to say thank you. Normally they make fun of this trait and they find it quite annoying. But you know what? Deep down inside, I know they recognize what I'm doing, but no one would ever come out and say anything. But in the end, everyone ends up having a great time.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Shanice. In most organizations, doing great work isn't always enough. People also need to see the value you bring. That's where politics comes in, not the negative kind, but the kind that helps leaders make their efforts visible, build influence, and get things done. So now we will shift our focus on power in organizations to show that it does not just come from a leader's formal title or personal qualities. It can also come from their role and position within the organization structure. Now that we understand that power in organizations isn't just about a leader's title or position, it's also important to recognize how that power is maintained and strengthened. One key factor in this is recognition. Power and recognition goes hand in hand. Sometimes doing your job is just not enough. Leaders must also make sure that others recognize their contributions. Power grows when people see the value in what you do and appreciate your efforts. This brings us to impression management, which refers to the strategic behaviors people use to shape how others see them. It's about managing your image to create a positive and professional impression. However, impression management can backfire if it comes across as insincere, arrogant, or dishonest, so authenticity is key. It's not just leaders who do this. Followers also use impression management by adopting behaviors that influence how their leaders perceive them. Now that we've looked at how impression management helps shape how others see us, let's take it a step further and explore how politics operates within organizations to build power and influence on a larger scale. Politics in organizations is about more than just office maneuvering. It's the use of strategies to acquire, develop, and use power and resources to achieve desired outcomes, especially when there's uncertainty or disagreement. The main purpose of political power is to help leaders understand the goals, needs, and perspectives of others, and use that understanding to influence them in ways that support the organization's objectives. When we look at organizational political activity, we can see it happening on two levels. First, there's external politics, where organizations try to influence government decisions that directly affect how they operate. For example, regulations or public policies. Then there's internal politics, where individuals or departments use political skills to get things done when formal policies or hierarchy alone aren't enough. Leaders can also build their personal power politically. Two effective methods include taking on greater responsibility, such as volunteering for committees or challenging projects to build valuable connections and a strong reputation, and impression management, which involves controlling how others perceive you, creating a professional, competent, and confident image that strengthens your influence within the organization.
Now, team, having power is one thing, but knowing how to use that power, that's where the real magic happens. So let's talk about how leaders actually put their power to work to influence others to get things done. Rational persuasion is about using facts, data, and logical arguments to convince others that a proposed idea or request is the best way to achieve a goal. So this tactic works whether you are influencing superiors, peers, subordinates, because most people, they trust well-supported reasoning. It's most effective when leaders have technical knowledge or expertise on the subject. So although personal credibility also plays a role, especially when some parts of the arguments cannot fully be backed by data. So people are more likely to say yes to people that they like. So leaders can build this by being friendly, respectful, and fair. A little praise goes a long way, making people feel good about themselves, encouraging them to support you. No matter the culture, genuine kindness and consideration always helps. And then there was a group that spoke about reciprocity. And it is simple because people naturally want to return favors. So leaders can use this by sharing valuable resources like time or support. So when you show cooperation and generosity, others are more likely to want to do the same for you. In fact, many influence tactics like rational persuasion or building likability work because they create this sense of exchange. And then you have to create your posse. So you must develop allies. So developing allies is about building a network of people who could help you achieve your goals. There was an earlier presentation that elaborated on building a community. So this is exactly what this means. It's about making connections with others outside a formal setting, outside the meeting room, and understanding their needs and sharing perspectives, consulting and collaborating. All of this helps reach agreements on decisions or strategies. So leaders can also expand their network by placing supportive people in key roles, but it's important to not appear self-serving or you would risk alienating important allies. So one of the simplest ways to have influence is to ask for what you want. So leaders rarely get what they don't ask for. So it is important to be clear and direct about your goals. Make personal proposals explicit and don't be afraid to be assertive. Sometimes courage and clarity are enough to persuade others and to achieve the outcome that you want. People tend to want what is rare or limited. So scarcity increases perceived value and urgency. So leaders can use this by sharing exclusive or early information to make people feel like they have some exclusive information about something, and that will make people feel special. Highlighting unique benefits in this way also helps gain support and influence decisions. And lastly, formal authority gives leaders power, but it's most effective when combined with expertise, honesty, and trust. So by applying the 7 influence principles like persuasion, building alliances, and using scarcity, leaders can strengthen their influence far beyond their position alone.
Power can reveal a person's true character, and without ethics, it can easily be misused. Let's look at how ethical principles help leaders use power responsibly rather than abusively. So we will now look at ethical considerations in using power and politics. Leadership involves using power and influence to achieve important organizational goals, but it also carries the risk of misuse. When leaders use their authority responsibly, they can motivate, inspire, and guide their teams towards success. An example of this is a manager notices a few employees are struggling to meet deadlines because of outdated equipment. Instead of blaming them or using authority to enforce strict penalties, the manager uses their power to advocate for new resources and arranges training to help improve efficiency. By doing this, the manager uses the authority to support and empower the team, not to intimidate them, showing ethical and responsible leadership. However, when power is used unethically, it can harm individuals, create distrust, and damage the organization's culture. For example, imagine a department manager who takes credit for their team's hard work to gain a promotion, while quietly spreading negative rumors about a colleague to appear more competent. Although this manager achieves personal success, their actions weaken teamwork, lower morale, and create an environment of fear and competition. This is a clear misuse of power and politics for self-interest. So, as we've just seen, power can either be good or bad. It's how we use it. This brings us to two very important ways leaders can approach power. Some use it for personal gain, while others use it to benefit the group or organization. These are known as personalized leaders and socialized leaders. Let's explore the difference between the two and how their motives shape the way they lead. Personalized leaders use power for the benefit of others and the organization. They act with integrity, fairness, and respect, making decisions that align with organizational values and promote trust and collaboration. These leaders understand that ethical power strengthens long-term success and builds a healthy workplace culture. Personalized leaders, on the other hand, are driven by selfish motives. They often use their authority to satisfy personal ambitions, seek recognition, or control others. Their focus is on personal gain, even if it means exploring people or bending ethical rules. One major area where unethical use of power occurs is sexual harassment, when individuals use their position to pressure others or create intimidating environments. This is not only unethical, but also illegal. Many organizations now enforce strict policies and reporting systems to protect employees and prevent such abuse.
Now, let's look at the ethical action principles for leaders. Leaders may have to ask themselves some questions if they are ever in a dilemma when it comes to making an ethical decision. They may ask, is the action consistent with organizational goals, not personal gain? Leaders should always ensure their actions support the organization's mission, vision, and long-term success. When decisions are made for personal benefit, such as seeking recognition, power, or promotion, they can undermine trust and harm the organization. Ethical leaders think beyond themselves and act in ways that contribute to team and organizational growth. Another question they can ask is, does it respect the rights of everyone affected? Ethical leaders consider how their actions impact employees, colleagues, and stakeholders. They avoid using their power to exploit, manipulate, or silence others, and instead strive to create an environment where everyone feels valued and heard. Next, a great leader will ask, is it fair and just? Every individual in the workplace deserves respect, fairness, and dignity. Ethical leaders consider how their actions impact employees, colleagues, and stakeholders. They avoid using their power to exploit, manipulate, or silence others, and instead strive to create an environment where everyone feels valued and heard. Finally, they can ask, would you want others to behave the same way around you? This principle, often called the Golden Rule, encourages empathy and self-reflection. Before acting, leaders should ask themselves how they would feel if they were on the receiving end of their decision. If the action would seem unfair or harmful from that perspective, it's likely unethical. Ethical leaders lead with compassion and treat others as they would want to be treated. In the end, ethical leaders focus on using power to uplift others, build trust, and create lasting relationships that benefit the organization as a whole. Power should never be about control. It should be about responsibility, integrity, and service to others.
So everyone, as we are coming to the end of the lesson, let's do a quick self-assessment recap. For each statement, think about whether it is true or false. We'll reveal the answers next, so test your knowledge and see how much you remember. First statement, power and politics are rarely found in organizations and only apply to high-level leaders. The correct answer is false. Power and politics are an important, though often hidden part of all organizations. Next, charismatic leaders appeal to both the heart and mind of followers, inspiring hope, faith, and change. That's true. Charismatic leaders motivate people emotionally and intellectually, creating an atmosphere of change. Next, transformational leaders focus mainly on getting followers to support them personally rather than the organization's vision. The answer is false. Transformational leaders inspire followers to believe in the vision of organizational transformation, not just in the leader. Power is the ability to influence others to reach desired outcomes. That's true. This is a core concept. Without power, leaders cannot influence effectively. Coercive power often leads to higher follower commitment and motivation. The answer is false. Excessive use of coercive power usually results in resistance, not commitment. Followers are most likely to show commitment when leaders use personal power rather than positional power. That's true. Personal power, like expertise or referent power, often builds stronger follower commitment rather than formal authority alone. Dependency increases when a leader controls resources that are important, scarce, and hard to substitute. The correct answer is true. The more critical and unique the resources a leader controls, the greater their power. Leaders can gain power through interdepartmental dependencies, centrality, and control over information. The answer is true. These strategies help leaders strengthen their influence within the organization. Using power ethically means serving personal goals first before the organizational goals. The correct answer is false. Ethical leaders prioritize organizational goals and respect the rights of individuals and groups. And for the last statement, one principle for asserting leader influence is rational persuasion, which involves using logic and facts to gain support. The correct answer is true. Rational persuasion is a powerful, ethical way to influence others and gain commitment. Great job, everyone. This self-assessment shows how power, influence, and leadership styles interact in organizations. Keep these concepts in mind as we'll be moving into applying them to real-world scenarios. Does anyone have any questions or need more information on this topic?
So, seeing that no one has any questions, we'll wrap up. So, as we're wrapping up, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've explored today. Through our activities, we saw that leadership isn't just about titles or authority, it's about influence, trust, and the ability to inspire others. True leaders motivate, guide, and support their teams through their actions, their communication, and their example. They use personal power, emotional intelligence, and integrity to make a positive impact, whether it's persuading a colleague, inspiring a team, or simply leading by example. Remember, leadership is something we practice every day in small and big ways. The power to influence and inspire isn't reserved for those at the top. It's available to anyone willing to step up, act ethically, and make a difference. On behalf of Shanice, Jamie, and myself, we wish to thank you all for participating today. Keep these lessons in mind as you continue your own leadership journey.